prepared to work on all the time, when really it's just happens to be there's a crossover between the words, and then what we're consistently practicing. And it's finding the people who are interested in consistently practicing, which by definition in modern internet culture means being able to disengage from the discourse, words, and do your thing in the background without getting caught up and moved on to the next thing. It's everyone has this problem in every sphere now. It's like
for sure.
Even like the business guys, it's the shiny new toy. They're trying one thing and then they see some other method and then they switch to that. It's not everyone is suffering from it, but the problem is, especially the things we teach, this kind of like psychophysical techniques, by definition, require you to be able to focus your mind, to consciously choose to focus your mind and then work on things even when you don't really feel like it. It's the polar opposite of mindless scrolling. So we're already fishing are we fishing in the wrong pond? For people like this,
I was thinking
maybe
that as well.
Because on the YouTube, there's the guy who's really into learning. He's watching hours of videos and he's happy to listen to a 4-hour podcast and those type of things. And he's like working his own stuff in the background. That's one, that's one thing. And then there's like the jumping around on Twitter. And as I say, it's really easy to think that just because someone's talking about the same things, or that maybe they're quoting some of the same people, that they're even remotely interested in doing any actual work. Because why are they there? Usually it's not the same reasons we're there.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. Yeah, it makes me wonder if Elon's plan to have longer form content could even work on Twitter. And I'm sure he's done his research on it, but like if you put longer content on there, people, I don't think they're capable of actually consuming it, just because of the
whole thing is designed for you to move on to the next thing. It's like even if with all good intentions, how can it? Because you click to read more on a longer tweet the way it is now, and you're already halfway down your itching to get back to the scroll. So I don't know, and especially if it's something that requires you to, like a few weeks ago, I was thinking I might just throw out all this digital offers and just make a paper thing that I send in the post to people that they work from the paper. It's like a physical newsletter type thing. And, you just sign up and you get it when you get it. I just post it and, depending on where you live, you'll get it at a different time. And that's every month. And you have to pay a bit more, but you actually get a thing. And then you work from the thing separate from your computer. That would be more functional. I mean, somebody will just say, but you could just have a file and they they print the file. Well, most people won't even print it. And even if they did, they're not going to, it's already presented to them in the context of a computer world. And really you're trying to get them off it. So it's a problem. It's like a real issue for working with this stuff, because a lot of the people, guys that influenced us, like Hyatt and those people, it was different problems they had to deal with. They didn't have this mad online attention stealer.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, but I'm actually all contented out. Like I feel content fatigue. There is so much content. People, creators are just pumping out content like so much. Like every day, some guys are just making video. I can kind of understand like people who are frazzled, so they can't they can't focus on anything. And there's just so much shit that your mind just gets blown out and you just can't actually focus on anything. I kind of get that, to be honest. Like I get the, I wonder, it's interesting you say returning to a newsletter. That could be a good idea, because you just like, it's not going to work in the digital realm. And, the only problem is it's inefficient, I guess, in terms of like, what are you going to do?
Inefficient in terms of sales.
Check it out for the newsletter, or I get.
It's just like I expect silver coins at my door in 2 weeks, so you're not getting this month. Actually, that would be good. But anyway, it's inefficient for selling, definitely, and marketing and things, but it's efficient for practicing. The only problem is if you join later, you don't have access to the early ones, so you'd probably have to have an online archive. So you're already stuck into digital. Because a lot of the things I teach are progressive in the sense that there's certain things you have to learn first, learn things later. So I wouldn't only be hammering complete beginner stuff because people have been there a while would need more advanced stuff. So I'd have to figure out a way of combining beginners and advanced, or making it kind of plug in. You can try to make each one as evergreen as possible and not completely dependent on the last one. Although from a marketing point of view, it's probably quite good because you have a definite deadline every month. If you don't, you're not pretending. I have 10 copies left of my PDF, like all the guys are doing. It fucking annoys me. 50, 20 copies left, 19 copies left. It's PDF. What? And I read the other day a PDF, the size restrictions on a PDF are something like 200 miles or something. You can actually make a PDF 200 miles wide. It's
really?
insane.
200.
Yeah. So anyway, so PDFs we're not running out of PDFs, guys. You don't need to have so many copies left. But if you have a newsletter, you actually have to post it out, print it off and post it out. And you really have a deadline. So you're saying to people, when you send them the email, 2 hours left or whatever, it's real. It's not bullshit, So maybe that helps people make a decision, But I was thinking more from the point of view of, for what I'm doing, it actually is better to have like A4 size paper, even if it opens out, it's an A3 one with diagrams, like a sort of map of diagrams, this and then this and then this, and it's big, and you can stick it to the wall, and your mind is, you're studying the different relationships of movements and body parts and stuff I have in it, and you're more likely to then implement it because you know it better, rather than just you're on the computer and then you're going to come away from social media to quickly do this thing and then go back to your social media. It's just not realistic in terms of doing the work.
No, it's not.
But at the same time, that's where it is. I don't want to be like a Luddite and have it all completely separate in that, because I don't do that either. I do both. Slightly online person.
Yeah.
Closer to very.
I don't think it's a matter of being a Luddite, because it's more like you're just acknowledging the human brain and how it's just fucking not capable of doing something like that.
Yeah, and remembering it's a tool, because it's like you don't see like a fucking like a joiner walking around with a hammer in his hand all day long. Do you know what I mean?
No.
I mean, at some point, like they use it and need it, and whatever, and they're not like he's not got one in the bar with it. Well, he might have one in the bar, depends where he drinks.
Yeah.
But that's what we just forget it's a tool. That's the problem. It's designed to make you forget it's a tool. I mean, it's like
it is
that's a massive thing. You can talk about long form all you want. It's designed to addict you to short term. That's what it does. It's trigger. They know that how it's what it's doing. He definitely knows things it's doing to people's brains. So whether he's been like at it and talking out the other side of his mouth when he says these things, and it's just purely business.
You saw everyone get the shits with him the other day when he limited their their view counts. They can only view like fucking 6,000 tweets a day or so. I forget how much it was, but he limited how much people can see. Did you see that?
I saw that. Yeah. What's your theory about it?
Oh, I don't know. I got no fucking idea. With him, I'm convinced now he bought it for the AI, so I'm convinced of that. I don't think there's really any other reason.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's the AI combined with the neural link shenanigans and all that stuff. Yeah, it's definitely like data center of everything. It's also power center. If you're like a billionaire guy,
that is
leverage over other people. It's the place to get the leverage because everyone's on it, and you know how it was being used to manipulate stuff. It's like it's underpriced, if anything, if you think about it like that.
Oh yeah, 45 billion is fucking nothing. Like particularly, like in proliferation world, and fucking a startup in a garage is worth 45 billion these days. I mean, I don't know what he's up to, unless it is just a cash grab, and he's like, I know these fuckers aren't going to quit. Like they're going to fucking buy my Twitter blue, so cry all you want, you'll be back.
Yeah, to replace like Substack is a pretty easy thing for Twitter, because I think even Substack themselves didn't seem to understand how dependent Substack's growth is on Twitter. It's like all people leaving Twitter to go sending them to Substack. The whole point, Substack got big because people were being banned from Twitter. So some journalists were saying things on Substack they weren't allowed to say on Twitter and getting paid for it. That's how it happened. And they seem to think that they can just exist without Twitter. They've got like the Substack ones have got like delusions of grandeur. They thought they were more important. You know, it reminds me of who was it? It was one of the Dropbox. You know that app, Dropbox.
Oh yeah.
I think I think Apple offered them really early on before Apple had iCloud. They offered them something like $1 billion, $2 billion or something to buy it off them, and they were like, "No, we're not." They refused, you know. And Steve Jobs is like, "It's not a business; it's an app. You know, it's a function. I don't know the word used. It's a function, not an app, something like that." And because it was just cheaper and easier for them to just plug that in rather than just do their own thing, and they refused because they thought it was bigger than it was. I think that's Substack of that problem, because all Twitter needs to do is just make a prettier interface for doing the articles similar to Substack, and loads of people will just start using it, especially political people, because they don't feel they need to use Substack anymore, a lot of them, because it's not been censored the way it was.
Yeah. They take a fair bit of money,
differently.
Actually. Yeah.
What's that?
I've noticed. They take a fair bit of your money. Like, I don't have many subscribers, but I've just noticed, like, they do take
it. They take 10% straight away, and then by the time you pay fees and currency conversions and all that, it can be more or less 15%.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, and there are other issues with it as well, in terms of there's not really that much customization you can do, and they don't make it. It's not straightforward how you would just. I mean, there's probably a technical answer to this, but it's not straightforward because their URLs are funny, so I don't see how they would just, if you move to some other blog or whatever, how it would transfer the pages straight over and stuff. I think people will have problems with that if they actually try to leave it, because of the /p/ things. Probably a way of doing this on WordPress or something, people will tell me, but either way, it doesn't matter if there is or not, because most people don't know that and they won't leave because of that. So, but that would prevent people from taking on, from starting it, maybe from joining it. I don't know. Whereas Twitter is just like, fuck it, just use that.
It's easy, easy.
It's ugly just now. The articles.
Yeah. I think a lot of the content on Substack is political too. I've been looking around a little bit for something that might be a bit more interesting, but that's the case everywhere, isn't it? It's all about politics. But anyway, what you can do about it, I suppose. But there may just not be a solution, and just have to keep fucking going until we slowly and painfully fucking get some practitioners together.
Yeah, well, I was thinking, I've been interested in a lot of like late 19th century, early 20th century, some kind of things that were going on then, and there was like physical culture then, but there was also like psychophysical culture stuff, and then there's loads of like new thought occult type things going around then as well, But a lot of these things, what's interesting is a lot of them were done by I forgot the word. When you sign up, it was like you sign up to these correspondence courses where you sign up to a thing and they send you a thing out every month with theory and then the practices at the end, And all these things were done like that.
Consumers will be scratching their head at this, I think. What fuck is he talking about? A fucking correspondence course?
So I think you just sent a postal order or something, or you sent, I don't know how you paid for it.
Postal order. Yeah.
And it was something they took off in America. It's an interesting story. Like they I can't remember exactly, but it's something like the only reason they took off is because something was changed in the post office and you were allowed to send a certain thing cheaply, but not other things or something. So it made a loophole where it was really cheap to do these things, or you were allowed to do these things. I can't remember what the deal was. was a law, like a specific law was changed in America, or the something to do with the post office, and it made these things possible. They were just the equivalent of Substack then. It was just all these things that weren't mainstream, and it was like kind of niche ideas, but loads of it was like self-help stuff. I think there was probably like political there was like political donation stuff going on then as well. It was probably that what started it, so it'd be like Substack full of politics as well. But the thing about it, and a lot of those things are books now. You'll see a book of some guy, some like new thought writer or whatever from 1900. But really, it wasn't a book; it was a correspondence course, and they would just get people to sign up, and then they would just produce them every month for a year or something. So they didn't even have it ready; they were just doing them monthly. You know, it's like a physical newsletter, basically. So that's like that's a tried and tested method that they were doing. That was going on for years, you know. And even when
you know, you can't censor that easily either, can you? If you think about it, if people are worried about censorship, and I guess
yes, it's a lot harder to quickly search what's in the thing you're sending. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if it's like, yeah, I mean that eventually all the green people will put so much taxes and stuff like that they'll try and censor it that way.
Paper anymore. Yeah, you know, I have this amazing poster back in the day, a yoga move poster. It was really pretty big, and it kind of outlined movements, like step by step, like sequences of different yoga positions. It's fucking fantastic. And I just had it in my spare room, and I don't know what I did with it, but it was really good because you'd forget something halfway through or whatever it was. You could just look up on the wall and it was all there. So there's definitely something.
Yeah, that's why I was thinking about the. That's why I was thinking that, and also if you've got it on the wall or lying around, it reminds you to do it. It's there. Oh, I'll do that just now rather than this other thing. Oh, I was going to go on the computer and look at Twitter, but I'll just do this thing now for 5 minutes, and then you end up doing it half an hour. You know, you have to kind of trick yourself like that. I'll just do it for 5 minutes, and then I'll go and get my fix on Twitter. And then when you start doing something 5 minutes later, you're into it now. So yeah, you can play these tricks on you, and the psychophysical effect of it is a lot different from looking on a computer, because it's like a physical object on the wall, and you're seeing the diagrams, and that's what you're saying about sequences. You know, you're seeing the order from like left to right or up and down or however you do it. That makes you understand what it is you're doing better. You know, you feel the structure, but you by intellectually understanding the structure on the images and the diagrams and how things relate to one another, and what steps come first in time, what steps come later in time, how it should look, that kind of thing. That gives you a kind of physiological feeling of what you're doing and where it's going, that encourages you to keep pushing at it, because you don't feel lost. You feel you don't feel like you're stranded. You have to sit down and figure it all out, because those are the things that put people off practicing. It helps you get started each time, which is really useful. Rather than you don't need to be like I will pretend you're going to suddenly have all the discipline to do it one day. I'm going to wake up at 4:30 tomorrow morning and do this. You're probably not, you know. But you would already be doing that if you could do that.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that might maybe that's the thing that'll come back for this reason.
Yeah. You know, the other thing is, I suppose, I think you're really onto something the more I think about it, because it's something like, as I was saying, I think people are just there's so much digital information that actually going back to just getting something in the mail and working through it with like tangible materials is like, just when I hear that, I'm like, fuck yeah. And it could be because I'm old and I can remember doing that with certain things back in the day. Like I remember doing a couple of occult courses. That was probably 2005, 2006. So it's, fairly recent that stuff is still happening, right?
Do you want to tell people what the courses were, or you want to not? I don't know.
Yeah, it was. So I dabbled in the occult for a number of years. It was a fraternity, and it was what's this fucking guy's name? It was so long ago, I can't remember. It was Waite. You remember Waite? What was his first name? Alfred A.E. Waite.
Yeah, wait.
And I think it was maybe Arthur or something. Arthur Edward Waite.
So he wrote on like ceremonial magic and
yeah, theurgical fraternity.
Yeah, it was like the more kind of West, the kind of like grimoires,
Golden Dawny
like
shit.
Oh, it's more Golden Dawn. Okay.
Yeah, and then there was this other guy, Edgar Casey, who's like a famous kind of dude, and he actually has he was a part of this lineage kind of thing. It's complicated from memory, but anyway, so there was this occult fraternity, and they were doing basically a correspondence course like that for the first bits of it. And I did that for a number of years before I, ended up meeting the people, and I don't know, I didn't really jive with it in the end. Although I did get some interesting experiences out of it, I suppose. But yeah, I just kind of ended up coming to the conclusion that there was nothing there for me personally. But it was cool because you get the materials every month, and you'd get like basically some printouts of some material that you're meant to study, maybe some documents, some techniques, and they give you, what you're meant to do. Various meditations or visualizations are pretty big in the occult, with some, particular types of chanting and that kind of stuff. So yeah, it was good. It was exciting to get it, and then you'd have something in your hand that you could work through, for that month. And basically, obviously, being an occult order, they would have a different subject every month, like a different thing you'd have to master. That's a part of that Western canon. And yeah, I just found it was a good way to do it. But again, we were much less stimulated back then. I'm just thinking of, like, there was no way you could log into Facebook. I don't even think Facebook was a thing at that time. If it was, it had just started. Or when was Facebook? 2009 or something? Yeah, it would have been before that, I think.
2009, yeah. Yeah, I mean,
anyway,
I remember you'd be looking forward for weeks for the next edition of some magazine that you're subscribed to or something.
Yeah. And anyway, yeah, it was a very effective way of working through something. And when I look back, probably I dedicated myself to those sorts of courses far more than I have anything online. Probably, and I'm not sure if that's totally because it's online or it's just where I was at the time. But they were very good. And even Dr. Hyatt's work, you get a DVD, notebook, or a workbook. You just watch the DVD, on a TV or whatever. And there's very little opportunity to get distracted with that model. And yeah, I think it's probably a good way to do it. Whereas if you try to put something
from a book, because people say, "Oh, just make a book," but it's different from. It's not the same as a book. A book is it's already in category of you already have 200 or 400 of these fuckers in your house anyway. So it's just another one of them, and then it's not really the same. So like this thing is make it if it's a correspondence course or something. And plus, there's people at the other end of it, and other people are doing it at the same time. And usually, there's a way of linking up with the people and stuff, which is a draw for many of the people. But it goes against kind of one of the mentalities with social media anyway. I know a lot of the internet marketing guys aren't like this, but the mentality of the social media is you have to be big and reach as many people as possible. Whereas if you're going to do something like this, it really is going to be a limited amount of people, but they're going to go deep on it. They're going to you're going to select for the serious people.
Which is the most important
higher
thing,
percentage of doers on it.
Yeah. Because otherwise, it's a waste of fucking time. It's a waste of.
So if you get over the need for web fame, if you get over your need for web fame and having millions of followers, then maybe something like this is
way to go.
Viable. I don't know. It's interesting that it's the occult people pioneer this type of things, and probably it was porn subscriptions, magazine subscriptions, probably pioneered subscription model.
Probably the one, yeah.
Porn. Like DVD. I studied this years ago. The reason VHS video cassettes beat Betamax is because VHS had a longer. Their set tapes were better for porn industry, basically. So everyone ended up using VHS, even though Betamax was technically better, because it was just easier for the porn industry, found it easier. And then there's loads of things like that. There's a book about this, I forget its name, but the porn people were the first people, loads of stuff. And you see it online as well. They're the ones using like the, cutting edge, worst type of advertising. Remember, you would go onto any kind of site and you get these pop-up ads, They were the first people using all those ones. I don't remember normal companies using those. Maybe, I don't know.
No.
And I'm talking very old here. I'm not. This is not an admission of my browsing history that I'm getting them and nobody else is getting them. This is like back in the day. So, yeah, and then it seems to be that, and that research I was reading then about it was like porn stuff driving some of the technologies, or they're like the early adopters, but it also is the cult ones as well, the cult people, because that early 20th century kind of time when these correspondence courses were big, they like guys like and then later even Napoleon Hill and all those people, that kind of stuff, they were all the money making guys. So it's money making guys, it's the occult guys, and the porn guys. It's just what you'd expect, really. The same things that's full of Twitter now. Twitter's full of lots of porn, that kind of stuff. Lots of people, aesthetic accounts, which are basically porn accounts, pretending to be traditionalist or something instead. And then you get like all the money making guys who are, most of them don't even have any money. And then you get the and then you do get the cult stuff. There's loads of that on Twitter too, but I don't really follow that much. I know I follow a couple of guys who are interesting, but in general I don't.
It's got that tacky fucking, they use all those weird symbols and it's all yuck.
But I mean, if you think about it, every corner of Twitter has their own symbols in terms of memes and stuff,
They do.
Memes upon memes upon memes. And I saw today, somebody was criticizing, somebody had done an ad or something, and the ad was like one of these faces, I don't know, is it like a soy jack face, what they're called?
Oh, yeah.
It was one of those faces.
A Wojak.
Wojak, sorry, yeah. So it was like one of those Wojak kind of faces, and then round about it was standard objections to, I think it's like NFTs or something, which I know nothing about. I'm not going to get into. But anyway, this was the ad. But it was all the criticisms about him. It's a scam. It's this. They had all round the pitch of the face, and people were criticizing this as an ad, saying if I was doing an ad, I wouldn't have an ad that has that's saying all the bad things about my product. That doesn't make any sense. But they don't understand that it's on top of that face, which is meaningful to a certain group of people. So they don't see it as negative points. They see it as that idiot type of guy would say these things, So this is not. I know nothing about NFTs. I'm not pro or con or any of that stuff. I'm just saying this is what these two people are debating. So they just those guys just didn't have those layers of meaning attached to that. So it was a completely different effect on them as a argument, if you can call it a meme an argument. So there's that.
Who won?
That's as far as I followed it, because as I say, I don't know anything about the
fucking boring
two people's point of view.
Yeah. Well, I suppose we can start thinking about, because I guess this kind of ties into something you say you've been putting together, which it sounds interesting. So that's the intelligent movement. So were you asking people what you should call something the other day? I think, right? Is this what that was referring to? Intelligent movement.
It's connected with it, but not directly. No, intelligent movement kind of It's just a sort of vague, overarching umbrella term to describe a certain type of movement that isn't
dumb.
the way
Dumb
people
movement
normally
would
think
be
of
the
it.
other.
Yeah, stupid movement.
Right. Yeah.
So, what I was asking on Twitter is I was saying I'm involved in I think I said like an emerging field. It's related body, mind body techniques, related stuff. In this field, it has a name, but people, which I think is accurate if it's meant in a correct way. However, most people using it, and there's a couple of key people use it. One in particular uses this name in a way that's not just different from me, but contradictory. And he's quite influential in that realm. And I don't, it will cause friction. It will cause, like, I'll have to deal with, there'll be like drama if I start using it in a different way. So I was saying to people, should I just do it and fuck it and take over the field and have the drama? Or should I just come up with a different name and do my own thing and forget them? So if most people, or a couple of people had said, it's better just to do a new name. I suppose that would fit with marketing, start a new category rather than change the existing one. So then I just thought maybe I'm just deciding whether to pick a fight or not, because I think the guy's using it wrong, and the guy has annoyed me and other people who I work with, and he's annoyed as well.
Is this gentleman known to us, or is he in any?
No. It's like a different field from. It's a different field, but like I'm involved in it, and anyway, so I'd asked people that, and it is related to intelligent movement, kind of. Not kind of, it is related to that, but the intelligent movement's a different issue. I'm kind of writing the newsletter on them. I would just be rambling if I talk about it now, because I'm putting together some science papers and things like that to kind of show that I'm not just me talking out my arse. That there actually is some reality behind it, and it's like a trend in science, although there's hardly any of them talking about this. And it ties in with some of the things we've been talking about, and it complements it in a different way, because when I say intelligent movement, I'm talking about top-down kind of cognitive control of movements, not some kind of romantic thing. Oh, if you just stop thinking and trust the intelligence of your body, to none of that stuff, Obviously, your body is intelligent. Obviously, there's layers of intelligence. Obviously, animals, there's an intelligence. Children, intelligence, obviously. But what I'm talking about when I say intelligent movement, I mean including that stuff, but also using the intellect and integrating intellectual understandings with movements directly, not writing about them and then moving as normal, not thinking separately, but thinking in the movements, during the movements. And what I've been researching is there's some philosophers and some cognitive scientists and other people. They're discovering that this idea that experts, so someone who's a genuine expert in some kind of movement-based art or sport or some kind of activity, music, or it could be anything. There's this myth that they just do it, that the expert, the really good ones, have a totally clear mind and they're not thinking at all when they're performing. That it's, if they think, it just gets in the way, and thinking gets in the way of doing, and you should just have a blank mind, and that's what the best people do. Well, they're finding that's bollocks, and I always thought that was bollocks. I've always thought when people are really performing the top level of anything, that they're constantly thinking and making little decisions, but it's happening so quick. They just have a much quicker conscious mind for that activity because they've been training for years and hours every day. Not the same as a normal person. So a normal person, if you're learning to do something, you get to a point where you can just automate it, and you don't want to be thinking about it when you do it, and it just happens by itself. But an expert is someone who's trying to get better all the time. If you're trying to get better all the time, you are thinking and being aware of what you're doing, and there's tiny little decisions you have to make at any point, whether you're a sportsman or a musician or anything that involves some kind of motor skill, intelligent motor skill. So, and it also ties into this idea of flow state. So everyone has this idea that that the flow state is just this, I'm not going to try and pronounce the guy's name, but the guy who wrote that book, Flow. And the idea is that you get into a state where you stop thinking and it's just happening by itself, and time just passed so quick, and I was really into it there and whatever. That as well, I don't think is true for a real, genuine expert, because you're thinking and you're struggling and you're trying to figure things out at the top level. A lot of things are automated, obviously, more and more gets automated, but the mindset of an expert or a superior person in that sense is always trying to improve. So if you're always trying to improve, you're not letting it be automated by itself. It's like so flow state for me is the flow state is for midwits. Flow state is for midwits because
or it's for an activity that doesn't matter, right? Like if you think about it, it's kind of like I get into a flow state when I just know what I'm doing and I don't have to think about it. But
like driving something like you're in the flow state and you can just do
or reading it. Yeah, even at work, tasks that are not cognitively demanding. But if I have a contract or something where I really have to focus on it,
exactly, like my understanding of the flow state is that even the guy who wrote it wasn't actually that you're performing at your best; it's that the feeling of was the best. The flow state is about feeling, not performance. So you could actually be shit, but you feel great in the flow state. So that's the first problem. That's very problematic if it just feels good, but what's the results? I think the guys, that's what he says. It's like a misunderstanding of other people. Anyway, by other people later. Maybe, I don't know that much. It's a long time since I read the book. So anyway, so the myth is, and this is what I'm writing about and putting together some resources about, is that that there's like no conscious control in expertise. They just have to have a blank mind and let it happen, that kind of thing. And in my work with the intelligent movement practices that I've been doing, mind-body techniques, I know this isn't true that you are just doing like you're not thinking. I know it's not true that that you'll perform better when you're not thinking, because I make people think all the time, and you're constantly struggling to think about more and more things at once because you're training that ability. It's something that needs trained. Like you don't expect to just lift the heavy weight straight away. You need to train it. And it's the same way with this kind of cognitive control of movements. You can train them. Children naturally start figuring this out, or this kind of happens naturally to a certain level, and then it stops until you have to consciously choose to train it as an adult or a young adult or whatever. And this is why I call intelligent movement, because otherwise you're just relying on sensations and feelings, which is just the same as an animal. What's the point having all this conceptual thought and all the human stuff and the frontal cortex and all this stuff? What's the point of it? You're just going to go, yeah, but for intelligent movement, you have to get rid of that stuff and just let the animal stuff take over. It's totally stupid. And I mean stupid in a technical way. It's non-intelligent. It's anti-evolutionary, actually. Anti-human, actually. Doesn't mean you need to be like a rational cell. And it's all, it's just words and none of it's like the solution to everything, because it isn't the solution to everything, but that's the human way of dealing with reality is concepts and reasoning and using your intellect. And just for some reason with movement, people you just are meant to just throw it away. Very strange. It's
I'm surprised people. It's weird. I'm just thinking, I remember rugby, because I played rugby, when I was a younger guy, and even when I was older. I feel like I shouldn't have played because it fucking hurts when you get older. But when you're learning, and admittedly it's a team sport, but you still have your position in the thing you got to do. But that's why you have a coach there, right? Like he's saying that you need to have this position, and you got to think about what's going on, and you got to think about the rules and what's happening. You need to develop that awareness. So you can't just run around the field like not thinking. It's absurd, actually. It's a lot of those activities that are very physical are actually also quite mentally engaging.
You're making decisions. You're running with the ball.
Exactly.
You're making a very quick decision about who to pass to or not to pass, and it just happens so quick. So, like an expert, and the philosopher woman whose paper I was reading, She wrote with I think it's a neuroscientist, I can't remember. But she's her point is that that they're making constant little decisions all the time. That that an expert is someone who she defines an expert as someone who's been training in that field for 10 years and does like 4 or more hours a day, like a real serious person, like think of the swimmer, Michael Phelps, what's his name? That guy, like he's just in the pool for hours every day. That kind of level of effort doesn't need to be the top guy. It just needs to be somebody with that level of obsession. And you can't get these guys into psychology labs. It's very hard to get these guys. They're not interested in $8 an hour to do a psychology test like students are, So all the tests about flow state and all the tests about whether you're better to not think when you're doing things, there's loads of them in psychology and other fields. All of them are just are like students and stuff. They're not experts. So you have to make a distinguish. You have to distinguish between an actual expertise in a field where you're consciously, deliberately training and trying to improve constantly and putting in the time. From just a normal person or someone who's even just trying to get good at it, but they're not like obsessed with it in that way. So there's that. Firstly, you have to distinguish them, and so her thing is that when people are doing things, they actually they're thinking all the time. They're using cognition all the time. The best people. And then I found another paper by some other guys. I think it's psychology as well. But I'm only halfway through this one, and they're talking about. Wait till I find the name of this actually. It's called an ecological approach to cognitive enhancement, complex motor training.
What? Sorry, what?
It's called an ecological. Ecological is in psychology term. It's not. It's not environment. It's psychology. Ecological approach to psychology. An ecological approach to cognitive enhancement, complex motor training. So their point is get this page up. They're saying that you can get better. What you mentioned earlier about really physical things having a mental component. So this is what they're studying. And they did a study that had 3 groups. One was just people who did. It was to see because they know that exercise improves cognition and things. So like if you exercise, there's like standard in neuroscience, a certain amount of exercise, and they'll make people's brains work better, makes the physiology work better. Stuff. Everyone knows this. But they did the study with just people doing aerobic exercise. They've improved them in like purely cognitive tasks, like something you would get on a computer or something, working memory training. Then they compared it with, so there's people did aerobic exercise, people did computerized memory tasks, this kind of like brain training kind of things. And then other ones did a special type of sport. I can't remember what they call it. They have some name for it. Basically, it meant sports where you have to think a lot as you're doing it. But it's very physical and you have to think. So they chose, I think it's wrestling and dancing. So like they're like high intensity action, physical movement, but you also have to think about spatial. You have to reason spatially and understand where things are moving and stuff. And you're thinking about you're thinking spatially, but you're also thinking verbally at the same time because you're having to remember instructions and what to do and things like that. So they tested these 3 things, and the people who did the high intensity sports that make you think improved in all kinds of like sort of globally in cognition, not just on specific tasks. So what they're comparing this is with like there's a thing about chess. Everyone used to think if you do chess, you're going to be smarter at everything. And then they tested this and they realized that actually they're just smarter at chess. They're not necessarily smart. It doesn't spill over into other tasks. It's really task specific, And so like chess, even with chess, they had the best memories of where pieces are on the board. Obviously a chess guy compared to a normal person. No one would think, everyone would assume this, true. But then they tested them with remembering where pieces are on a board that isn't within a game, and they couldn't remember as well when it was not within a game. You know what I mean? So their ability to their working memory was totally dependent on it being in the context in the middle of a process of a game. In that context. and it didn't even spill over to the pieces on the board outside of a game. So it's not going to spill over into other stuff.
That surprises me. That really surprises me.
It surprises them because they didn't do it. So
it's really counterintuitive, isn't it? Actually, when you think about it.
So it doesn't. So their point was they were trying to figure ways of what's things you can do that will spill over into cognition in general, because they're like trying to enhance cognition by using complex motor control. So it's like I've talked with it's more common in our sphere as well to talk about how physical movements and things like that are intelligent, and they can make your thinking more intelligent. So most people agree with that. But this is actually trying to make your thinking more intelligent by, instead of doing just thinking stuff, training just thinking, to actually do something that involves physical things also. Not both. This is not like do lots of study and read lots of things and then go and do a sport and then come back and do lots of study. That will improve some things, but what they're talking about is actually integrating the two. So there's no separation between the cognitive training and the physical fitness. Does that make sense?
So did they give an example of, like, is that
they used? I haven't got through to their actual tests yet, but as far as I know, it's wrestling and there's wrestling here.
So how would you do it? How wrestling. Like what would that practically, like, if you were to do, say, wrestling? How would you integrate the?
Well, what they're discovering is that, as many people who do martial arts will tell you, it makes them feel smarter when they do it. I've heard jiu-jitsu described as human chess. Because you have to think about all the movement stuff. But again, as I said, chess has limitations of whether it spills over. But there's something to do with the intense physical nature of the activity combined with thinking spatially, and try and remember verbal instructions. Because like if you're doing martial arts, say you're in the middle of sparring, you might think that you're just kind of implementing trained reflexes. I've drilled this move so many times, I'm just doing it, but you're really not. You're thinking about what to do, and is this the right situation? I can do this. It's all happening so fast. It doesn't mean your cognitive parts of your brain aren't involved in running it. They are. It just seems like it's all getting automated. It's the way we've been taught to think about it.
Yeah, I think. I was just thinking on that point, when you think about it, you're trying to put pressure on the other person so they're not able to think. They're under so much pressure that they just cave, right? Like it's the same on the rugby field. So if you're dominating, if you're dominating them, like you're trying to induce the opposite to what you're describing. They're under so much pressure that they're in a negative flow state and they just can't figure out what's going on because you're just assaulting them on every level.
Yes, and then think about what that means in a game, because you're to put pressure on them. What it means you have to be aware of where they are in relation to you. You have to understand that
everything.
Don't back off now. Keep pushing forward. Because if you back off now, they'll start coming at you, and the momentum will shift. So you have to keep pushing forward. So you're already there's a spatial awareness recognition of where all the other players are, where the leverage point. If you just push here, then it'll make them keep retreating or whatever. And and at times, and then you change your decision. Like just really dawned on me recently how much in Thai boxing, half of sparring is pretending. It's deceit. It's lying. That's what half of it is.
Yeah.
And if you want to be honest all the time, you'll be a bad fighter. Do you know what I mean? So
sure.
It really dawned on me how much, because as I'm getting a little bit better at sparring, I've not been doing it that long, and I'm like, holy shit, I'm getting better because I'm better at pretending now, or feints and whatever. And that is like you're fainting, and then that becomes something or doesn't, and you're making these decisions constantly. It's not automated. Like every sparring session with somebody hasn't happened before. How can you automate that exact circumstances and order of things, the exact person's size, that exact behavior? Even if it's the same person, they're behaving in a different way. There's so many different things. You're never in the same situation twice. Heraclitus. I'm not the first person to say this. Heraclitus said something like, "You don't spar with the same person twice," was it?
But, that was it. Yeah.
So it's always different. So you can't train. It's not an automated reflex. It's you're having to make a decision now in the time now. So people have this backwards. You think because you have to drill things, they think that you're automating it. I'll drill this so many times it'll happen by itself. I just don't believe that's what it is at all. I think you're making yourself stupid. You're stopping yourself from becoming more intelligent by thinking that's what you're doing. And actually what you're doing is you're creating more resources and practice in order to cognitively choose those things at the right moment. And your conscious mind's so quick for this activity because you've practiced it consciously, deliberately so many times. This is what makes an expert different. Experts kind of mentality as well. It's not constantly trying to get a little bit better all the time, which you don't need to do if you're just doing something for fun and for distraction. That's fine. But what these papers are talking about, it's experts. So anyway, so this whole realm of behaviour, I'm referring to as intelligent movement as opposed to the other kinds of movement, because the two main ways that people tend to approach improving movements are, let's call it the way of muscle and the way of feelings. So like the way of muscle, it's you just get bigger and stronger, and it's all literally about muscles, and it's about force. And you do things directly. That muscle, what's the lift for? What do I need to do for this muscle? What do I need to do? That kind of mentality. And you use very reductionist, breaking it into parts and leaving it left hemisphere. All these things.
Very.
And it's like brutish. It's just like just do it directly, more. So that's one.
Of course, they would argue that it's for the purpose of the aesthetic view afterwards. Of course, right?
Yes, but that's the method of doing it is still the same. It's like I'd like a bigger bicep. What do I do? I'd like a bigger this. It's not integrated into a bigger thing. The methods I'm talking about, even though they're thinking like that. So there's that side of it, and then the other way of feeling is if you just feel your body more deeply and you become very, very aware of your sensations, and you do these somatic things that you get into the deeper body, the natural body, and all that kind of stuff, it'll just magically spill out into better movement, because you feel new things, you feel the movements will become more pleasurable. You'll say, I've been doing this body thing and I feel great now and stuff. All that's real. You do feel better and stuff. It's not the same thing as getting better at movement, because you need some kind of way of measuring what better movements mean. Again, it's just that thing where feeling versus results. So
what kind of methods? I'm a bit naive on this. So what kind of methods? The thing you were just talking about, how you trust the intelligence of the body, man. Like what kind of methods work that way? As an example, like in terms of movements and that kind of stuff.
The Western kind of, one thing is the Western interpretation of things like Tai Chi and stuff like that, where it's like, I'm not saying this is how it was originally, but it's like you're just moving slowly and you're being very aware of the movement, that kind of thing. Or the way I was originally taught Alexander technique, the way that most Alexander technique people do it, it's about releasing the tensions and then try to feel a feeling of freedom. Various other somatic ones where they'll do things to you, and then it's better if it feels better. That's like that's how they do. You feel, I did this. I went to this therapy, and now I feel great. It's good. It works. But I'm going back next week, and then I go back the next week. Well, is it working?
Yeah.
Or are you just getting a buzz and feeling good, and it's not solving anything? So there's that kind of thing. So that's kind of like there's the harsh approach and the soft approach, But both of those are at the levels of sensation. They seem like opposites, but actually they're both at the level of sensations and feelings. They're perceptions. They're dealing with level perceptions. It's you. There's not really much cognitive control in the movement at all. So there's just like, okay, I get a program to do these things for these muscles, and you just repeat reps, repeat on. It's just like mechanical repetitions. There's no thinking involved. You know what I mean? Yes, you have to focus when it gets heavier and stuff like that. There's like a point of focus, but that's just one cognitive function, focus and attention, important one. But it's just one. It's not like intellect. It's not like reasoning about how things are related and stuff. Very little of that's happening. Some, but not much. And because it's based on feelings, like they're directly feeling into muscles and feeling what they're doing to improve the movements, you can only feel so many parts at once. You can't feel 20 different body parts. You certainly can't feel all the different relations between them. You can't feel whether part D is forward of part F, or whether, but these things all at once. You can think of it. You can understand these if you study some diagrams, and you can understand the relationships intellectually. And then, but when you go to move, you can only feel like 3 or 4 different things at one time, and you can't possibly rearrange that many things at once just by feeling. And also, there's the problem of whether your feelings are even accurate. I can demonstrate in any lesson with people that they're just not. You think you're doing one thing and you're actually doing something else. Sometimes the opposite. That's very common. So, in a way, you could say, so if it's something like posture or movement, and you're like, is it better or not? So how am I going to improve it? Well, I'll just move it around based on the feeling and the sensation of it, the perceptions I have of it. Okay, now that perception is more enjoyable. Therefore, I fixed it. It's better now. It's a really big assumption that that's like an animal. An animal, it's just all an animal gets is its perceptions. It just assumes perceptions is the world, and then they react according to those perceptions. And they only have a limited range of things they can do. Each animal's doing its own thing. You can't do that much more other stuff. Humans are obviously doing hundreds of different things because we have language and reasoning and tools. The animal, in a way, animals don't have, and this gives you far more options. So when it comes to movement, people aren't really using this directly in their movement. They're not using this kind of cognition. They're just in those two ways of the way of muscle, the way of feeling. You're just trusting to the perception level. You're not actually using conceptual thinking about what you want to do at all. So during the movements. So there is people that do it before and after the movement. So if you can imagine like a professional golfer has this team of people teaching, training him. So they'll like get him to do like
stuff with the swing and everything. Yeah.
So he's like swinging, and then they give him some instructions. He swings, and then they analyze the video and they say, "Look, you're doing this thing here with your back. Don't do this." And the guy's like, I mean, I don't know any of these guys, but I guarantee there'll be things like, "Oh, I didn't notice I was doing that. It doesn't feel like I'm doing that." And they're like, "Well, you are. Look on the video, you're doing it." Then they say, "Stop doing that." So then he stops doing it, but he still can't feel it either. And they look at the video, go, "Look, oh, that's good. It's better now. You stop doing that movement you didn't need to do. You stop doing it." And he's like, didn't even feel stopping doing it. So that's his cognition changed that without the direct feeling of it. Sometimes you feel it, sometimes you don't. So this is the thing. People like, it's kind of weird to begin with. Like, you just assume you have to feel the movements to do them. No, you can cognitively make a decision about a movement, decide to do it, and you'll see that you've done it if you use video or a teacher.
Yeah, I've had a golf lesson like that. Just on that, like, I know, like, because when they tell you to do something and they're like, your foot's not going properly, and your the follow through movement is wrong. And I just remember, like, I had so much, like, I couldn't even. Well, so they call it proprioception, right? So it's just that kinesthetic internal perception, just sort of short circuits, and you're like, I'm not seeing what I'm doing at all.
Right,
like you just can't even.
Yeah, but then they say something to you like, "Yeah, that's better," and you're like, a part of you's like, you're like, I didn't do anything that time. How was that better? I didn't notice. And then you might even think, "Oh, this is a scam. This guy's just making shit up. I didn't do anything. He's just saying a better."
Frustrated. You're like, I fucking am doing it.
I am. That's more common. Yeah, I did do it. No, you didn't. So you didn't do it. I know he feels like you're moving that part of your body this way. I know it feels like that to you. And when I asked you to do the opposite thing, when I asked you to do this, you actually did the wrong thing even more, but you felt like you were doing the new thing. That's common as well. Just in adjusting posture, never mind like swinging a golf club. And and you might just think, oh, the guy is just saying he's making shit up in order to do this, like, but he's battering me up, so I do more lessons with him and give him more money or whatever. But actually, it's your cognition. Your understanding. You understood what needed to happen cognitively, and that part of your brain, as a higher controlling part of your brain, developmentally, evolution, somehow recruited the right muscles and the right movements to do perform the action that you wanted, for the end goal. You might not get it exactly again. You might lose a little bit, but now there's this training. You're getting better and worse, and you don't need to feel the movements when you're using cognition like this. You can't. There's certain things you just can't do without doing it this way. So, like, as I say, there's only
the other interesting thing
you can do one time deliberately.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So that would be like animal. So animal behavior don't need any of this stuff. Humans, we need it because you're not born instinctively doing all the things you need to do to survive as a human. You have to learn a whole bunch of it. you would like, you're not born knowing how to build a house. You're born knowing how to, well, not born, but you'll learn how to cover something over your head when it's raining, like a basic shelter thing. But you don't instinctively know how to build a house. That has to be learned from other people using concepts and tools and and a plan. You're already using cognition to do that. So, and like even just making a basic tool, if you're sharpening a stone with another stone to make it pointy for a spear, you have already cognitively thought about a future situation. You're thinking about the future. You're planning for the future. You're figuring out how to make this into something that it currently isn't. This is not perceptions. This is cognition future. It's not live in the now. If you live in the now, you'd never make a spear tip. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Why would you?
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's an important point. The other thing with flow states, and I've never read that book Flow, but the question I often get is, well, I get into flow states doing this and this, so that I meditate just by doing the activity. I'm like, no, you're not understanding meditation. They're actually quite different. Mindfulness of the task and being in a flow state of like not. There's a relationship, but they're not the same thing. And I feel like it's the same difference you're talking about. So if you're in a flow state doing any activity, yeah, it feels good, like because you've lost track of time and you obviously know how to do the movement well enough to get into the flow state. But that's not the same thing as being mindful of the activity in a technical sense of what you're doing, which I think is related to meditation in a big way. I mean, people always ask me, what's the difference between a flow state and meditation? Why would I bother doing it? And I'm like, well, you're actually quite different. Like you could be in a flow state and be mindful. Technically, I think you probably could.
I don't know. The opposites.
Thought about it.
Maybe even opposites.
They have similarities, but they're not the same thing.
In a flow state, you're in a trance. In a actual mindfulness type thing,
hypnotized, right?
Distinct. This is that. This is that. This is that. This is you're dehypnotizing yourself. You're out of the trance. You're seeing.
You're trying not to be in
yourself from the trance. Flow is getting into it, which is has its uses obviously and is enjoyable, and that's why people think it's perfect because they happen to get a thrill from it. But I mean, how many people are correlating their flow states with their actual results? I guarantee basically no one is. I'm in flow states all the time doing this thing, but does it relate to what you're trying to do? Maybe you don't care, but that's fine. But it's not the same thing. And I learned the hard way with posture stuff. You feel like your posture is great. Feels like you're improving. Feels like you're moving gracefully. Feels like you're lengthening your back and getting taller. Then suddenly one day you look at yourself in video and think, shit, that's not what I'm doing at all. I'm shortening myself. I look terrible. I'm doing this bizarre thing with my front of my ribs and my pelvis and all this stuff. But, I'm talking about myself, obviously. And but that's not.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah.
I felt better and better, but actually in the videos it got worse and worse and worse. Like, and this is something as intimate as your posture, and that was something I was doing professionally, and really, like, it was mind blowing to me. I can't ever undo that. I can't ever undo that, and but it's quite good because now I'm like, okay, whenever I'm doing something, when I'm doing something that has a subjective effect, I'm feeling different things. How can I, along with that, because I'm not denying those feelings. Obviously, I want to feel better and all those things. But what can I do along with that for this activity that is a quote objective measurement alongside it, and then I can kind of correlate the two. So, like for the posture stuff, it's videos. Okay, so I'm feeling these things, but I look at the video and I'm doing this other thing. I felt like I did to do this on the video. I didn't. I felt like I didn't do this thing, but on the video I did do the thing. And so for other things, you're with the breathing. The feelings you have the breathing, and then you're measuring. So they may or may not correlate. You're getting better when the two things get closer together. Usually, although if you're pushing yourself as a real expert, there will always be you're pushing to the next thing. It doesn't feel quite right, but then the objective side of it is giving you some advice on what to do next and giving you some feedback. And you don't need to just rely on your gut feeling that everyone just worships their gut feeling, which again is just dropping to animal levels. There is a place for intuition in these things, but intuition is after reasoning as far as I'm concerned now. People seem to think it's like, you have to have reason and thought through things and understand concepts and the way things are. Then your intuition can start using what you already understand and making little punches and leaps and stuff. It doesn't count, like it's not.
I think there's a,
people have that
I think you're right. I do think there's, I think there's a place for it, but only within the context of achieving an aim. So there's a place where you do want to trust, quote unquote, the intelligence of the body and all the squishy feelings and all that sort of shit. But it's not an end point, and it's like I would only ever use something like that in the context of trying to get somewhere else. So there's still an intellectual, not intellectual, but there's still a plan. You know what I mean? It's playing into the plan. So if I want to do like just thinking like, so if I want to do Zen breathing, like in the Zen way, how they just say let the body just breathe like it wants to, that's playing into a framework where that is useful for the outcome. Whereas I think maybe what you're getting at is a lot of people out there, just that's their endpoint. It's just the intelligence of the body and squishy feeling.
Yeah, but it's not even that. I think it's just hiding from the harsh reality of thinking, which is hard.
Yeah.
And it's like in the Zen thing, the master is the video. He is the objective thing. He's telling you are or aren't doing the thing. You're thinking I'm enlightened because such and such happened, and he's like, no, because he's the objective thing in that. But he is only objective because his subjective feelings were overruled by the other master, and it goes back. And I understand chicken and egg when to start, but you get more and more objective through time. And then the subjective and objective should get closer together. That's my basic approach now with most things. It's not. I don't. It's just assume that there's two sides. To assume that it's one thing with two sides to it. There's the quote mental and quote physical side, but it's really one thing, and you can't know it directly. We just kind of know both sides. I'm not saying that really is the truth, and just it's a useful framework, and you can apply it to anything. And it really shuts down a lot of people's crap because they've got nothing to back things up with.
I even had some of these thoughts, not in this way, because I'm just finding out what you're talking about now. But I was at my last Zen retreat, so there was a little bit of speaking about breathing, and obviously in Zen they don't talk about it much. They just say, well, as you get more relaxed and more engrossed, then your breathing will naturally deepen and slow down, which is true. It's true. But I still I feel like it's ignoring the reality of most people's physiology, that actually it's not that easy just to do that. And there's actually effective ways in which you can make it happen quicker. And I felt like putting my hand up and just going, yeah, okay, but someone could struggle with that for years, whereas you could easily sort them out in a couple of months. Like if you had them measured the pace that they're meant to breathe at, train them, retrain the things. So set up a metronome, like whether that's an app or whatever it is, and just say, just do this for half an hour a day to retrain and rewire your subconscious. And I just feel like that rational approach is actually quite reasonable. Whereas in Zen, there's a real dogmatic kind of belief that don't play with it, just let everything happen as it's meant to happen, which I get that, but I feel like there is a bit of a dogma surrounding it. Whereas, admittedly, the master there was very open to people doing yoga, in between to try and stretch out the muscles. So I don't think they're against it, but there is in some of those things I've noticed, like I was just thinking at the time, like, well, no, actually, you can really help someone get to the bottom of this abdominal breathing, like really rather quickly, and they don't have to be confused for 15 years. You can sort it out in a couple of months if you want to do it.
Yeah, they have the right mental
just
tools.
Something that came up. Yeah, and that's a different thing, though, isn't it? So what they're promoting is proprioception, just pure, just watch. In a way, that's kind of what they're promoting. Whereas, from what you're saying, is like, well, here's physiology, here's the language and the model and the exercises and various other things that you've, deduced with the thinking capacity that can enhance the activity. Yeah.
They're using it all the time, just not they're like bit thinking they're not. So like in Vipassana ones are like this, they think they're just dropping down to the pure perceptual level and all that. And but actually what the practice is to distinguish things. There is this, there is that, there is this. So you're using this, that's like a cognitive thing to distinguish between things like that. And you're counting the breaths. So that's a mental tool. So you don't just start doing that. You have to be told. You have to understand what words are. You already have these layers of mental tools on top of one another, language, words. Then you get the instructions. Then you're counting. Then you metacognition to go, oh, I just went off in a daydream there and I forgot to count. Okay, I'll start again. Now you're using intentions, attention, intentions. You're using all these higher brain functions. And one set of higher brain functions is spatial reasoning, spatial awareness, understanding relationships between moving parts. A lot of these things just get dropped out. The mechanical understanding just gets dropped out. And then in the West, the mechanical understanding is taken up and obsessed over, and then they forgot about the connecting it with the cognition side of it. And that's what it's getting back to now. And that's what these papers I'm pointing to is where they're like, oh, these are just separate. It's not like there's two parts of motor skills. In motor skills, there's the what you would think is the body embodied intelligence part, where it's just kind of drilled in and it's in your body. And if you get brain damage, you can still do it instinctively. Your hands know how to tie your shoelace or whatever it is, because it's like it's automated. And then there's the other side of more skills, where it's like in knowledge. You have to understand concepts and how things work, and you've taken in instructions and understand principles, and you're applying these things really quickly, even if you're not actively thinking about them all the time. It's in your understanding. And they kind of divorce these two things. So that by splitting those two things up in motor skills, that's the exact thing that's happened in the culture, where you've got all the mind guys and the academics, they're doing something over here, and then all the physical guys and the physical education and those guys are doing over here, sport and whatever, and they're not connected. So like the classic symbol of this would be, imagine is that anatomist who's completely hunched over posture. So he understands all the stuff about anatomy I'll never know. Smarter than me and all this stuff, but then he can't seem to put it into practice. Just as an example, or like a big fat doctor giving you advice about nutrition.
Classic.
Everything, this is common. So that's all just part of this just giant split between mind body. And the people, the thing that really gets on my nerves, and I ran about a lot, not so much recently, but I'll start it up again, is that all the people who say that they're putting these two things back together, they say that they're mind, body, spirit unity, they say that they're doing techniques for integrating the mind with the body, or the mental and the physical, but you actually look at what they're doing, it's all it is focusing awareness on sensations and feelings. They're not thinking. They're just, attention, intentions and attention are cognitive, higher brain functions, yes, and you're deciding to focus them on sensations and feelings. Yes, that's using cognition, one tiny part of it, but then that's all they're doing, and they're just trusting that the sensations and feelings, if they just listen closely or they see them more clearly, then that's the truth and everything will be better. I just think that's total fantasy. Just cut out the top of your brain. You don't need it now. Animals are doing that anyway, doing it better than you. Humans aren't designed for that anymore. We're way past the point of no return to just do things instinctively like that. We're like built now that you have to learn language and stuff like that, or you won't be a proper human. That's the way it is.
That
you need tools.
Exactly. There's no point in descending unless you're going to ascend afterwards. Like it's pointless actually. So the only I see it as kind of like when you say all this, it's really quite obvious when you think about it, isn't it? I mean, because we do it all the time. I'm just thinking I've done it in sports before. I do it at work every fucking day. Like it's literally what I fucking do. I've noticed even in writing. I'm just thinking now. So you get you hear writers talk about flow state all the time and like how wonderful it is. Well, my experience is it's actually not that good. At least mine isn't that good because yeah, often when I read something that I've written in a quote unquote flow state, I felt motivated, and maybe I wrote a lot, but it's often doesn't make any sense. The grammar's terrible, the spelling's awful. Um, it's just long winded and kind of I end up cutting 3/4 of it out anyway. And that part is you have to be fully coherent and in like aware of what you're doing. So I always wonder, like, what are you talking about? A fucking flow state for writing? Just sounds like the worst thing possible. I can understand though, for example, if you were in a flow state and you were doing something more like artistic or something less technical, like disciplined amounts of flow states could be useful. So if you were able to use the flow state for various things and then temper it afterwards, I don't know. Like I feel like it could be. Yeah, I know what you mean. For sure, my writing is terrible when I'm in a flow state afterwards. Again, though, it feels good. It feels good to do because you're like, wow, I'm so productive and I feel so energetic and I'm just writing all this shit down. It's fucking awesome. Like, then you read it afterwards and you're like, oh, it's fucking terrible. That really is terrible. Anyway, yeah,
Yeah,
it seems obvious. It seems obvious. Yeah, it seems obvious. It's funny.
But like my thing about the intelligent movement is that it's in movement stuff all the time. Where like there's an intelligence, cognitive aspect to movement that's just completely forgotten about, and
yeah,
people are either the
yeah.
materialist, reductionist mentality of just everything's broken into parts. Like this movement's for these muscles, this pill for this supplement for this thing. Like tit for tat, like that.
Yeah,
like
I spoke about that last week, of course,
and we talked about
fucking problem with
Ian McGilchrist stuff. That's explained by that, and then the other ones. It's basically this romantic idea of back to nature and the noble savage and all these things where you just need to get away from all the concepts and stuff, and then it'll all just happen by itself and be better.
Yeah.
The thing about that's really seductive because when you start doing those things, you do feel better and you feel these deeper things, and it just feels so true to you. That it must be right. More of it must be better. So it's a useful tool for bits and pieces, and in the beginning, but you just because it's so powerful and it's directly on nice feelings, it just they're so convincing. It must be better to have even more of these. But really, it's you're just handing over your you're just handing over your responsibility to like this imaginary automatic system that'll do it so you don't need to think and live.
Well, it's impossible anyway, right? Just cognitively impossible what they're suggesting. So no matter what they do, it's going to involve everything about us, or everything cognitively and neurophysiologically is going to be involved one way or another. I'm almost viewing the human body more so nowadays, like, and particularly, I've been doing a little bit about body work and Reiki work just a little bit lately. And I'm almost seeing it now is instead of being obsessed with trauma and squishy love feelings and all this stuff that they always talk about, that you can use these techniques from a tool perspective, like you're just utilizing a tool. So if for example, I spoke about vibration recently as being like this very ancient mammalian way of releasing stress. So knowing that, that thing is not the end in and of itself, but it is just another tool. So if you're able to induce that for a specific purpose, that's kind of where you want to end up with this stuff, I think, right? Like, it's going into the squishy feelings is okay, just so long as you're mindfully using it and using it to integrate something, or for a specific situation, or whatever it is, and it doesn't become the end point in and of itself, which it often does. Particularly when you look at people that talk about healing and just all that, it's quite feminine, feely kind of stuff. I feel like they don't have a plan. They don't have a reason particularly. All their reasons are somewhat disconnected from reality as it is. So yeah, that's kind of interesting that you say all this, and I'm not sure if that's exactly what you mean. I think it kind of is. Yeah, I feel like that integration is important, and that's the way I'm viewing this work. I don't really view it. Oh, we just got to get away from thought and everything like that. I'm viewing it as like you're doing this for a specific reason, to rewire your biology in some very specific way that's going to benefit you in your actions in the world. And if it doesn't do that, it's really just kind of an indulgence that has no context. You need a context, don't you? Like, why are you doing this thing? If you don't have a context, and it all becomes, as you say, just an indulgence in being a shiny, happy person with, little fuzzy feelings, and having trauma come out of sacs through ducts, and getting rid of all the trauma.
leaking socks of trauma.
Yeah, did you not? There's that famous Hakan tweet that I used as motivation. I think he said that the overarching, what was it? The overarching metaphysical belief of affluent white female liberals is that what was it? I fucking got it here somewhere. It's a really good tweet. I'll put it up actually when I edit this. One of the strangest fixations of awful metaphysics, so awful as in affluent white female liberal metaphysics, is on a substance called trauma that they believe is stored in the body in small sac-like organs, where it constantly threatens to be triggered and erupt out of its ducts. They assert life itself is about processing trauma, which I fucking love that tweet. It's really good.
I mean, this is related to what I was saying earlier about like the way of feeling, that method, because this is it's all about you. It's all about if it feels. So feeling doesn't just mean feeling means the whether sense. It also means, when I use it, of if the sensations are more pleasant or less pleasant, or just new. So you enjoy these new feelings you're getting because they're different sensations. All these things can be useful tools and signs on the path to you're making progress in something, but they become an end in themselves to people, and a lot of people are there just to feel better, and a lot of them are to escape thinking, and there really is something unhuman about. I want to say subhuman, but it's like it
is kind of subhuman.
Yes, it's less than human to just throw away the cognitive side. So anyway, like another way to say is that what I'm talking about is a cognitive approach to movements, intelligent movement. It doesn't deny the feelings of movements, and it doesn't deny the physicality of movements. Obviously, it doesn't deny muscles. It doesn't deny any of these things. It includes those, but it transcends them. It's like it organizes those things. So like a cognitive approach to feeling is to understand that your feelings aren't always accurate, to understand that they're not, that your sensations of whether it's a movement is pleasurable or unpleasurable isn't designed to give you, it's not a tool of cognition. It's not designed to tell you whether that's better or worse. It's just telling you it's different. You do something new, it feels different. There's something going on here. That's all those little sensations are telling you, tiny little perceptions, is that something new is happening and might be dangerous. So you feel a bit uneasy with it. So if you're going to try and change something, no matter how wrong you're doing something, in some ways it feels right, or you wouldn't keep doing it. So like when you try and change it, you're going to feel wrong when you first make a change. Not always, but often it's just going to feel wrong. So it must be wrong, because how do you know it's wrong? Because you're judging whether it's right or wrong based on whether it feels better or not in that moment. So if your whole technique is based on doing things to feel a bit better, and you're judging, is this going well or not going well because I'm feeling better or worse? You can be going literally in the wrong direction. Because like if you're sometimes with meditation, if you're expecting to be suddenly calm and an empty mind, if you're meditating, you're in for a surprise. It could often be like the total opposite, because that's not what it's not. It's not necessarily going to be more and more pleasurable, likable things. It doesn't mean whether it's good or bad. Bad things happening might be bad, but it also might just feel bad. But actually, it's objectively getting better. And this is why you need people to teach you, and this is why you need some kind of outside objective feedback from it. It's not foolproof, obviously, but much better than just going by your feelings. And the whole half the culture is that now. And there's this I just noticed recently, last couple of days ago, I just thought about this. There's an unholy alliance now between the muscle people and the fuzzy feelings people.
Oh, yeah? Really? That's a weird one.
So
I haven't noticed.
The guys, so they seem like opposites, the harsh and the soft. But so if you take like a really caricature exaggeration of the archetype of like a really reductionist gym bro guy, okay?
Yeah.
So it's really like exact lifts for exact muscles and that kind of thing. You know, I know I'm taking it an extreme.
Protein and creatine.
And this for that, take this for this. It's all like that. So if you take a guy like that and he does those things and he's making progress in that world and he's getting better at that world and all those things, he often has problems associated with it. You'll get physical problems and other problems associated with this, including emotional and mental things, even though there's growth in some of those areas, but there's also things will come up and you'll feel different. And also you'll get injuries. So a lot of these big weightlifter guys, what do? They go to chiropractor every fucking week, every month.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And they get old, their bodies just fall apart.
So I'm not even talking about powerlifters. I just mean guys who do weightlifting, even trainers. It's surprising how many fitness trainers also are giving advice on these things, and then they also have to go to a chiropractor regularly. I mean, this should tell them something. So, and a lot of them, they end up going to all these somatic kind of feel-good techniques because they know something's missing from the way they're doing it, that kind of reductionist way. It's meaningless, you know. It doesn't. There's something not enough meaning in it for them. So then they flip the other way. So they either become ultra religious or they get into esoteric stuff. So there's all the esoteric gym bros now. Do you know what I mean? There's this unholy alliance between them, and some of them go like hardcore like a hardcore orthodox version of some religion. Other ones become into the esoteric fuzzy kind of stuff, and it's just like you would hear yoga mum talk about, you know, similar
yoga
stuff.
They really are like yoga mums, some of those guys.
So they've got the physical boot kind of thing, the muscle thing, and then they've got this feeling fuzzy thing, and then those two things are looking for each other. It's like it feels like those two things complete each other, and actually some of the people who only do the feeling based stuff, you'll find they end up doing some kind of physical thing. You know, they'll do like they realize there's a problem, so they become like very they also become like mechanical about supplements and specific foods for specific things and get really autist about nutrition and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean? So they like there's a pipeline from the fuzzy feelings to that too, you know. So those two the feeling people and the muscle people end up creating this unholy alliance, but what they're both doing is avoiding thinking about movements. They're both keeping things at the perceptual animal level, the feelings and the muscles, and it's about strength and force, and it's about feeling and new feelings, and it's this kind of combination. Feels like they complete each other, but both of them are avoiding cognitive control of movements during movements, thinking in action.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's lots of people who are very smart, have intellectual projects or academics and all that kind of stuff on the one hand, and then on the other hand, they're like really advanced in various kinds of physical culture or sport or whatever on the other hand. But they're like separate spheres for them. They're not they're not applying that cognition and the intellect during the movements. They may be doing before. They'll study everything about the movements, but then when they eventually do them, it's like trying to get it automated again and drilling things. So they've dropped a level of what is this really? Because it's not really a habit. This is more like a way of approaching the world, a way of finding what's true in the world. Epistemology, what it is. It's like, do I figure out what's true based on the conceptual reasoning level, or do I drop down to the perceptual feelings of sensations level, and that's where the truth. That's how I find the truth, because that's what the somatic guys do. You just, if it feels better, it's better, more or less. That's the kind of assumption. And
I
anyway,
think thought that's interesting. Just sorry to interrupt. I just had a thought.
Because I would never interrupt you.
No. it's just the I think they're mutually reinforcing, thought and quote unquote, or let's just say the physiology. Because I firmly believe that the quality of thought is commensurate with the quality of physiology, and that doesn't just mean being a massive cunt and walking around like lifting huge weight. It's far more complicated than that. But this is like another element as well. So I've definitely thought about the physiology impacting the quality of thought, but it's mutually reinforcing in the way that obviously thought is going to impact the physiology and its quality, because you're not going to be able to make any reasonable or enhancing change without having thought. It's just fucking listless, not to have that. So it's kind of like, well, I guess what you're suggesting is getting away from the extremes of each thing and just really just acknowledging the totality of the physiology and the thought, and how it's all really just one thing and all interconnected, and you can't focus on one bit without focusing on the other bit, which is what left brains do. So you could almost we almost need a word for thought and physiology, just one word, because they're not really different, are they? Like to describe everything. Because if you say like body mind or something, like you're acknowledging implicitly that there is some kind of difference. I guess conceptually it makes sense to
this is why I ended up with psychophysical, because psychophysical was being used with a hyphen. So I just thought, well, I can't find a word, so I'll just take away the hyphen and put them together as if it's one word. But really, you're right, it's made from two words, and the two things were never separate. They're
make up a
abstracted
word.
out of it.
You should do it. Add something to the English language. You could be
I'll think of
trendsetter.
Anyone who knows me for long will know how long I take to come up with the names of things. It could be years. I'm still talking about that. I'm still there's like trails of DMs with people about this or that. What about this one? What about that one? So annoying. Like it's like I'm having a baby. So I pick a name. But yeah, it's not like there are different levels, obviously. So like understanding the relationship of the elbow, like what the elbow is, and the intellectual understanding of the elbow, and the way it is in relation to other body parts, and all of these things, how you could use it as a tool, a weapon, is different from the sensation of slapping the end of your elbow and feeling it. They're different levels, but they're obviously interconnected in some way and inseparable. So really for me, it's the cognitive aspect of it. It's not like I've got everything upside down and I think cognitive is the main thing, and then the body's just a tool of like a homunculus wee man in your head who's the cognition controlling everything. It's not that. It's grown up out of this, and it's just the way humans are now, that our physiology, part of our physiology is as a top-down controlling guiding mechanism that we call cognition, these things are intertwined now. Obviously, most of the traffic is up the way, like because there's a body and the emotions that are behind these things. You can't have cognition without these things underneath them, obviously. It's not floating in space. Although many people seem to act like that is true. But the opposite isn't true, that you can just throw away that and expect all to function by itself. We're condemned to be cognitive creatures now. That's what we are. And the more tools people use, the more cognitive creature we are, the farther and farther away from just basic perceptions. Because that's the thing about the muscle people and the feelings people. Their reality is just the direct perceptions of the immediate present. They're not. It's not because thinking involves future, involves practical thinking. It's all about the future.
Yeah, temporal. Yeah, cognition. Yeah, and analyzing the past, of course, as well is a big part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and yes, you're making simulations of the future, remembering things of the past, and then making comparisons, making little quick judgments of what to do based on those things. And some things are obviously automated at lower levels that you don't have conscious access to. Many things aren't. And the thing I've found that I've learned in my work is that you can actually control movements in ways using your cognition that you don't think you can, because you don't feel them directly. It's not some woo-woo thing where I'm just, casting magic spells on your body. Well, you kind of are, actually. You're using words to direct things to happen, but you're really seeing if they happen right now, in the video. And you can decide that you want a certain arrangement of bony parts. There could be 12 different relationships. So you've got 12 different spots on the bones, and you want a very specific arrangement of all the spots, and you don't have them naturally. How do you get them? Well, you could try doing weights and feeling the body deeply, but it won't. I know this, I've tried. It won't make them make this certain arrangement that you've reasoned out is good. And then if you want to, but you can use your cognition to do it, where you decide in advance all the movements you want to do. And then you just set up a sort of little experiment, and you direct yourself to do all those movements at one time, and don't care if you can feel them or not, and just see which ones happened, which ones didn't. With a bit of training, you can start doing 2 movements at a time, then 3, then 4, then 5, and then eventually you can do a whole bunch of movements at one time. You've got all weird feelings happening, but you can't tie one feeling to one movement too quick. You're doing all the movements at once, but you can see on video. Fuck it, shit, it's working. Really, really weird. It's like anyway. So you just get this. You get this. A really sort of intimate understanding of how interconnected the cognitive, intellectual relationships between things, that kind of understanding, all these abstractions, and then actual physical sensations and movements.
Yeah. Well, even if the so you have the bodywork people, for example, like the extreme, I don't know the word, neo-Reichians or feely, trauma-y type people that just want to forget thinking and just go back into the body and sensations, etc. Who acknowledge that they have a problem very often, so they have trauma or whatever else, So I'm being unfair to a lot of these people. This is just an extreme case. But if on some level, they would have to acknowledge that the reason they have problems was really induced probably cognitively very often, because they're cognitive experiences that led to the different armoring in the body and, anxiety responses are all largely cognitive in some way, because you're interacting in the world and you had a bad experience or interaction that involved the intellect, sometimes even belief, and that belief continues on and it's kind of represented in the body, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, there's no real way to escape it. It's just as you say, we are just perceiving and thinking creatures.
We're making conclusions all the time. They're coming to conclusions. Even there's this feeling. Oh, that's trauma. There's a conclusion. There's like now you've a whole load of baggage for that.
Yeah.
And then,
what is that even? Like, just calling it trauma is the problem, right? If you think about it, like I always thought like the biggest like I almost feel like psychology, if it doesn't involve like just training, retraining, is really just a scam, because like if you use the word trauma or whatever, you're kind of like teaching someone to just hold on to something and to call it something. Whereas you could just go, well, you just forget it. It doesn't matter. Like, just, it doesn't fucking matter. Like, just let it go. But there's this tendency to just, no, it's trauma and it's mine. I've got to hold on to it. I'm going to apply this word to this feeling, and that's what it is. And yeah, I just feel like they're going the wrong way about it very often.
Yeah, I mean, they start again. It's like we were talking about last week. Starting with the words of the concepts, not the thing that they refer to. I mean, the words and concepts come after. They come from the world of, like, I don't want anyone to misunderstand what I was saying earlier. The sensations and perceptions are first, and then concepts are coming out of those things. But it doesn't mean that I'm not denying the concepts have to go back somehow to the world of perception, in the sense of you have to look for some evidence that what you're doing is affected things, so you're going back to perceptions, some video, don't touch your feelings about the posture, look in the video, see what you're doing. Well, you're back to perceptions because you're looking at the video, but you're using a more intelligent type of perception, using the right tool. Sight is more accurate than the kinesthetic feeling of it, but the kinesthetic feeling is more direct and intimate, so you believe it more, but you shouldn't.
You're putting it together like properly, like closer than what it is. You're putting, again, I'm wrong, but you're integrating the two things to be closer to the reality of what's going on, rather than going with one or the other and both being completely out of sync.
Yeah, and as your understanding changes based on things like looking and analysing and reasoning about them, and your movements or whatever you're doing will start to change according to that, because you're changed your kind of internal model, your simulation of what's happening. And because that's another cognitive thing, you can run a whole model. You can change your model of your understanding of the movements, and it starts affecting many things at once. And then it's not a tit for tat way. You don't just learn one little thing and then that goes with this movement, do that one. Then this other little thing you learn and then you do that one movement. It's not like that. It's a big, it's just a model as a whole. And then you start getting closer and closer to the model as a whole, rather than just, it's not like Lego. You don't just do one brick at a time. You have to somehow get it all to happen together, because you're an organism, not a machine. You're not. You have mechanisms, but you're not a mechanism.
No.
But which the muscle people think it's all mechanisms.
Yeah, you're a mechanism.
The feeling people are like, there's no mechanisms at all. We're just one. Do you know what I mean? They go the opposite direction.
Yeah.
They're both wrong.
Which on some level is kind of true, but then they're using it like in a way that's not really the case. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay to have those realizations or whatever.
They're both partially true. They're partially true. There are parts moving around the mechanisms, and everything is interconnected in one thing in a way. But it's not just those. It's like if somebody took Ian McGilchrist's thing and said, "Okay, you're either all left brain or you're all right brain." 9L.
Yeah.
He's obviously critical of the over left brain, but a lot of the people who like his book just flip the other way and try to be all right brain and get rid of all that stuff. It's like,
you mentioned you've been on the forum or something, right? Have you seen what they're like?
Yeah, that was a long time ago. But just in general, the people who tend to like it tend to be wishy-washy. Not all the people. There's lots of really smart people like it, and McGilchrist himself is ultra smart and rational and all those things. I'm not criticizing him. I'm just saying a lot of his followers jump on it because it gives them an excuse that, oh, cool, it is just all about feeling and feeling bad. And you don't need to think about all that annoying stuff that I find hard. All those things where I have to acquire mental tools to understand a next thing and then struggle through and figure it out. All the things just people don't like doing, but learn to do, because you'd die if you didn't do it in the past. And now we just kind of have a choice, so we're choosing not to.
Yeah, interesting. Very interesting.
So anyway, that's cognitive control of movements.
Yeah, no, I like it. I like it. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it when you finally get around to putting it out.
I'll put some examples in the newsletter as well. But like, I'll try and show I'll show some pictures saying like, here's.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't decided what example to use yet, but like, it's a good.
I guess they're movement sequences or something where you look at yourself and then you try to figure it out, or what do you think that would be?
It's just to show that trying to, like, if you're trying to do say you have a goal in mind that I want this structure, I want this part to be forward of this part and this other part to be above this part or whatever. Or I want there to be a vertical line. I want these specific bony parts to be in a vertical line, whereas at the moment the middle one is far further out than the top and bottom one. Say something like that. I want it to be a flat line instead of a triangle between these parts. Well, you're already in like reasoning world now. You're not feeling these parts. This is intellectual, but they come out of real things. You're abstracting out of a physical body,
actual existing things. Yeah.
So I could, for example, now you say, okay, so if you just go by the way of feeling, or if you go by the way of muscle, okay, so lift weights and do this program for 3 months and see if you change this alignment. You probably won't change it much at all. You feel very little. Some people will actually make it even worse, based on how, because you already have a wrong coordination, so you're going to do the weightlifting with the wrong coordination, and they're just relying on
you're just like setting it in stone kind of thing.
Exactly. You're just using the problem. You're using the same problem to solve the problem. And they're relying on you bulking up muscles in certain areas that force the physical shape, which will force you into a different structure because this muscle is bigger or that muscle is bigger. And it will like hold you in place. But if you stop doing weights for 3 months, you would just go back to the exact same structure you had before, This is it, and I've done this.
Yeah.
So I know it doesn't do anything. It's like a Band-Aid, or it's like imaginary. It's just totally temporary, treating the symptoms. So I could show someone trying to change this alignment I talked about, trying to make a straight line between these parts rather than a triangle. So, for example, this will be easier to understand on the newsletter with the images. And if you just go by your feeling, so that was if you tried it by the way of muscle. If you tried it by way of feeling, where you try to relax those parts and let it, try and feel it into a straight line. I'm going to keep moving around and I'm going to keep feeling until those feel like in a straight line. Okay, I've got it now. They're in a straight line now. Oh, this feels great. Look at yourself in a video side on or whatever. Okay, it's still a triangle. That's weird. It feels like a straight line now. Nope, it's still a triangle. Or it's even worse. You can see it. You've been doing the wrong thing, but you felt it was the right thing. So that would be the two ways I've talked about, the muscle and feeling. So if you were to do it the cognitive way, you'd be like, okay, so what do I need to do in order to create that alignment? Well, this part would need to go back. This part would need to go forward. This other part would need to go back. Oh, but they're all interconnected. So those top two ones the top and bottom would need to go forward at the same time as the middle goes back in order to do all three. So then you're like, oh, okay, so, but I can't feel those parts of the bones. They're bony parts. I don't have a feeling for them. I just have a vague feeling of the sensations around that area. So when I try to do it, I just do something stupid or bend over or the legs wrong. So, okay, so I'll break it down. I want this part to move back, that part forward, this part back. I try it. Okay, it went too far that way. So I want it to stop. I want this one to go back faster than the other one. I want this one to go back slightly slower so it has to go first. There's a problem. What's stopping it?
It reminds me of my pelvis. This is exactly what fucking happens.
So I have to move my pelvis now.
Fucking frustrating.
Exactly. So that's gone the wrong way. So now, there's another problem because in order to do that, I need to change this other relationship in a different place.
Yeah, and then my shoulder's forward now, and my fucking head's up, and just everything, like the way you move those, the three bits, and then your feet are up, and you're like, oh fuck, now I have to adjust that, and then it moves again, and you're like, it's honestly, it's really difficult.
Exactly.
It's not easy.
So that's all cognitive if you think about it, because you're looking on a course to get a plan for how to change this problem. You're doing this, it's cognitive during it, because you're trying to reason out the movements and then implement all the new movements at the same time. you're straining, you're feeling strain. It's not flow state, it's the opposite of flow state, as you'll have noticed. You're like straining to get it, but then eventually some things start happening, quote, by themselves. But really, it's you created that skill cognitively, and now that part can be automated. But now you're working on the next thing to add more in. You're solving the next problem, so you're always like straining for the next thing, but you're not having to remember all of them in your working memory at the same time. It's not like
you're retraining using your intellect. You're retraining the unconscious.
You've made it smarter, so you've made it more intelligent. So the movements, even the movements you're not aware of in the moment, are more intelligent now because you put them there. You consciously chose them and decided and trained it there. This is what makes it intelligent movement. It's not just happening by itself. No amount of feeling will make that happen because you had to use your reason to figure out these movements, and then the cognitive control during the experiment to try and make them all happen, and then the cognitive control to check on the video to see if it worked or not. So like you're this is impossible for an animal to do, but an animal doesn't need to do it because an animal's already doing it the right way, more or less.
Yeah, exactly.
And, because they don't have the conceptual part of their brain that does these things. So this is the downside of the human ability to have language and make tools. So the downside is you have to use your cognition to optimize your movements. They're not going to do it by themselves. But you can get away with it because we have enough tools to make us survive, because we can make food and all that. So everyone can be a slob and hunched over and still survive.
Or take supplements. Take fucking supplements because you feel like shit or whatever, because really it's a biomechanical problem. But you're like, no, I need to buy the supplement and fucking eat it because that's easier, right? It's easier to do that.
Exactly.
Than to change the habit that might be causing it. It's the same with breathing, because no one breathes properly. No one I've come across. So literally, I have to send them home with a metronome to just go, well, just do this for half an hour a day, or even more if you can, because you have to sit there and consciously change it. Then of course, same thing, making people aware of muscles and just the whole thing, which is something that was completely unconscious before. Becoming conscious of the process, consciously doing it, which then becomes more in line with what's meant to be happening over time. So in a way, I think, like all this work, when it's done properly, is the same thing you're saying here, right? Like it's objectively measuring and just twisting the body to be in line with what's meant to be going on, along with the model, the internal model of cognitive model of what's happening as well.
Yeah, and there's also
all these things.
Yeah. There's also the tie back to what we're saying at the start is we're thinking about it like experts. I'm not saying we're the guys with expertise, everyone else is,
No.
I just mean we're thinking about like how to improve all the time. So we're actively using cognition to improve things. That some things are being automated and all that, obviously. Some things feel better, but we're actually always pushing a little bit better, trying to improve it. That's our mindset on it already, is to each time try to make it a little bit better. So, but not everyone's doing that. Some people just want to take away the bad experiences or the bad feelings, and that's fine for them. That's all they want from a technique. They just want to get rid of just to feel a little bit better. That's what it boils down to. Which also ties into the problem we said at the very start about finding the right people on Twitter, because that is what most people are doing. It's like something comes up and they just want to fix it. They're not, and this is okay. It's not really a criticism, really. It's just the way it is that most people aren't doing things in a serious way, like with the value of expertise, value of being excellent at this thing. They're just not. They may be doing it something else, but just most things, they're just going to come to you to get something fixed. Some people, like I'll get people who they come just for the posture fix, or they come for something, and then they love the technique, and then it becomes a thing that they want to get good at. They get into it like that, but that's not the reason they came in the first place. Usually, people just want a basic problem fixed, which is normal. If you felt good, why would you go and buy somebody's service if you already feel good?
Yeah, exactly. It's almost like the purchase is enough to make some people feel better. like I've had a stream of people, like they'll come and see my work, then they'll get in contact with the DMs and like they'll ask questions for a while or whatever, and then you see them, they just kind of lose interest because it's not interesting anymore because they've gotten to the bit where they're maybe having difficulties and they need to, actually fucking that's a bit that's important. And you see them, they'll move on to the next thing.
And
You
then
see
they'll
them
probably do
posting about the next thing.
they'll get to that stage in the next thing and then move to the next thing and get
Yeah,
to
and then
that
move on
stage
again.
where it feels wrong. That's what it boils down to. But this is not really a judgment of people. It's partly to do with the education system now. It doesn't teach people how to
stick to something.
Self-experiment like that. To regulate your learning by yourself, because that's not what they want. They want worker drones. They want you. They want you to be passive. They don't want you to be actively thinking this because you're a pain in the arse for people ruling things. If you, because you can imagine. Well, first of all, most teachers aren't good at this stuff either. But even if they were, can you imagine trying to do a bunch of young ones that you've just taught to question? You've given actual methods and tools for questioning everything and all that. You couldn't teach them in a mass schooling format. Small private schools, sure, but not in a mass schooling.
No. Yeah. Yeah. No. Absolutely. Even people don't have the concentration to listen to what we've got to say on here properly before they fucking criticize us for things. People are just not after what you're trying to present necessarily, which is cool. Whatever makes them happy, but particularly with work like this, it edges on ridiculous to just consistently change things before you get through the work to a sufficient degree, and you can maybe integrate something else. But yeah, it's not on the menu, and people are very distracted. It's easy to have a dopamine hit, and I'm guilty of that as well. I bought courses thinking, oh yeah, I'll do this, and I've not fucking stuck to it. So it's not a criticism because I've done it before for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, we know we have been on the other side of it, so we know. This is what I was saying about the physical newsletter. I'm thinking, what will actually make the person do it, as opposed to.
What do you do? Why don't we do it? Why don't you set up a newsletter and we'll put the details in the comments here under the video.
I could try that. Actually, I could just say to people, look, if I get enough, this is when it's launched. This is when I'm sending. This date, I'm sending out the first monthly edition, first issue.
Yeah.
Can't even remember the magazine, the words for magazines. The first issue is sent out, and then you have to buy it by this date. And then if not enough people buy it, I'll just refund the ones who did and not do it. But if they do it, I'll do it. You know what I
mean? Yeah.
And I'll tell people in the sales thing. I'll say, if there's not enough people, I'll just have to refund your money. And to see if people are interested, because you don't know unless they pay, obviously.
I'll definitely buy one, so I'll get you started. If you go ahead with it, I'd love that.
Because I would put pictures of me doing stuff in it as well, and I'd put with pupils with their permission. I'm actually thinking of at the moment. I'm trying to find a couple of people to do ongoing case study things where every week they do a lesson and then I make a video or something out of it, analysing it. Be very structured. Very structured for me anyway. It'd be very structured, and every week I would do another thing, but they would have to pay something for it. They would have to pay half or something because I'm not giving it free because they won't be serious. But they would have to agree to be on video and blot out their face and stuff, so it's not going to be it can be kind of unknown as you want. So if anyone listening is interested in that, get in touch. But I'm not sure exactly how.
Lose about 15 kilograms, and I'll think about it. My fat body fucking pasted all over the internet. Okay. We'll put the word out. Put it out. How should they contact you? Should they contact you on email
Twitter.
Or
Twitter message is the best.
Twitter?
Yeah.
Twitter?
As much as I criticize it, but how do I contact you? Oh, Twitter.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, people are on it too much, but you must go on it if you're going to contact me to give me money. So that's fine.
Yeah. And I hate it. And that's how you will get the newsletter that is designed to circumvent it.
Well, that's probably how we
me
promote it, yeah.
on it.
But that is the nature of it, though. That can't be helped because I don't have like a paper. I don't have a list of people's addresses, direct mailing list or something. God, I'm turning into a direct mailing marketer now, aren't I?
Yeah, funnel.
I'm sending out like
Funnel thing. Yeah.
instant posture fixed, grow 2 inches, which is a real thing.
Yeah.
But,
With this one simple trick.
Oh yeah, there is one simple trick. Use your fucking reason. But it's not that simple. And I struggle with it too.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Yeah, but all this goes back to our very first episode together. Was the bad brain design, and like it's not designed. You're not designed to be easy to cognitive control of all these things. That's not the way the brain's designed. It works like that if you train it, but it's not just going to happen by itself. It's kind of a kludge, some of them say, and we're just trying to arrange the brain and the body in a better way.
Yeah. Yeah, very much so. So it's a good way to finish, I reckon. I'm gonna have to
Cool.
have an early one tonight. I'm fucking. But yeah, I'm just gonna make some notes here because I'm gonna put your Twitter fucking handle on there, just so I remember when I edit it. Twitter handle, and this is for the videos if people want to participate. And then the newsletter. So you're actually going to do this? I reckon you should. I reckon it's fucking a good idea.
I am thinking about it actually now, yeah, because I would just transfer. That would just be the thing. I wouldn't have a Substack. I would just I'll have some other thing to pay, so you don't have to pay the ridiculous Substack money,
Yeah.
I mean, I could do it through Substack. I could just say join the Substack, get this thing. I could do that. That would be the easiest way to be.
I like the idea as a physical thing, though. I like that.
No, what I mean is to sell it. I mean, join the Substack and I'll post it to you.
Oh, yeah, I see.
But I don't think I could do that because, well, for starters, it has to be more than the Substack price because you have to pay for all the postage and stuff. So it's going to have to be
You could
more
just use
expensive,
PayPal, couldn't you?
Yeah,
like if they
something like that,
you, just just
fucking. Yeah, I would just do that for the trial, because for the trial, I'd just be like, is anyone actually going to try this? And if you got like 5 or 10 people in, it looks like it would work. But and then you just a case of building up and then make a real site and a real payment gateway or something. But and maybe make a prototype and like have a video and show this is what it's like, and then maybe people do unboxing videos where they're opening Kevin's newsletter. The most important thing, it's even better than the new Mac. The new Mackay. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Yeah, because I like it. Like you're saying, it's like it is appealing. Because I mean, I would like one for stuff as well.
Yeah, because it's not like information online is not novel anymore. I think it's why people have trouble focusing because there's just so much of this shit. Whereas if like you got something tangible, you're manipulating the novelty circuitry. You're like making it novel again, like in a way.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely
people are gonna be like, wow. Yeah. It's kind of like hipsters fucking using cassettes for their indie music again. Like something a little bit interesting.
I'll put out my course on vinyl, won't I?
Yeah, do it. Yeah. Send like a mixtape or something with. Yeah, that'd be cool.
Different techniques mixed together randomly, like you don't know where they're all from. And one, you miss out the last bit of one track as it moves into the next one, so you don't even know what step 4 of the first technique was like.
They'll love it. They'll love it. Absolutely. Yeah, awesome. Okay.
But that's true what I was saying about the esoteric gym bros. I just thought about that yesterday or the day before. That like they've got so much on the muscle stuff and the mechanical stuff, the reductionist left brain kind of thing, that they have no choice but to flip to all